Back on the show. Chances are when you watch the NFL on Sundays, the majority of the faces you see and the voices you hear are familiar. And not just because you watch every week, but because you remember when they themselves played. Former players and coaches on TV not only have name recognition, but as we like to say in the broadcast business, they have PhDs in the game. And look, there are a lot of smart people in this world. The challenge is finding extremely intelligent people in a given vocation who are then able to translate that to a larger audience in layman's terms, which would be the viewers at home. The NFL actually provides an annual training camp to help players transition to off-field careers with an intensive media workshop. It's actually called the NFL Broadcast Bootcamp. And they've offered this since 2007, so it's not an entirely new concept. I mean, we're almost 20 years in. And nearly 3/4 of the former players you see on TV have taken part in this NFL-offered training camp. SportsCaster contributor Gabe Loper from Wayne State University at one point had NFL dreams. Okay. Now he's focusing on a more realistic dream of becoming a sports broadcaster. Not that that's easy either. But here is his commentary on the transition from player to broadcaster.
Everybody knows that the NFL stands for the National Football League, but there's another meaning for it as well. And everybody knows not for long. If you're lucky, you'll get onto an NFL training camp roster. And if you're lucky, you'll stay, maybe get your rookie deal signed, which usually lasts if you're, one of the top rounds or day one or day two pick, you might get a 4-year deal. So, okay, that's 4 years. If that, you might only get a year. You could be cut. You could be cut 6 weeks in the season. You never know. But there are the lucky ones, the ones that make it, beyond that rookie deal, sign that next contract extension, and then you're looking at 10 years, maybe even 12 years in the league. And if you're lucky, and take care of your body well enough, like a guy like either Peyton Manning's or the Tom Brady's, you could look at even a year 20. But what about after that? What about after that not for long period in which you've battered your body, you've been through the ringer? 16 or 17 weeks, not including playoffs, of consistent battery of the body. Consistent. Week in and week out. Yeah, you get the bye week, and obviously you get the summers off. But even those summers and the offseason is filled with hardworking training and consistent preparation for the season up ahead. So once that is all said and done, once the training is no longer needed, and you said you're done, you've hung up the cleats, it's time to go. What's next? Well, for guys like Demario Davis and Brandon Cooks, guys who have recently hung up the cleats for good and said their goodbyes to the NFL, are not saying goodbye completely just yet, because their future may lie in the broadcast booth. These two, along with 24 others, attended the NFL's annual broadcast training camp, which is about a 3-day boot camp for the future of NFL broadcasters. Actually, 70% of athletes that you see and hear in the broadcast booth come from this program. So obviously it works well. But what goes into it? Well, these guys, again, they're professionals of the game, or at least they were, because obviously they're recently retired. But these professionals of the game take the time to become rookies once again, to relearn the game, because as a professional, obviously, you see it very differently. The way that you study film, obviously, these for Brandon Cooks, wide receiver, you're studying the film. You're studying corner, your opposing corners, DBs, defensive sets, even your own stuff on offense, and seeing what you can do in order to counteract what the defense is doing, what the defense is going to prepare to do, because you're watching it for you to get better, which is, again, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But when you're watching film in a way to break down the game, notice tendencies in a way that doesn't help you, but helps you better read what's on the field for the listener or for the viewer, especially in terms of radio. Where radio, you have to completely paint the picture for your audience. The audience can't see what's on the field if you're talking through radio, if you're just on the mic. Obviously, TV is a little bit different because you have a little bit of a visual aid, but you're pretty much starting from square one. These dudes, these 24, including Mr. Cooks and Demario Davis, these dudes are starting as rookies once again, students of the game. And this is extremely, extremely impressive because this is staying up until midnight, beyond midnight. This is watching film. This is now not being the ones interviewed in player interviews, but being the interviewees and talking to these NFL players and coaches and coaching staff about what to expect for the upcoming game. And not in terms of, obviously these dudes are used to being on the receiving end of questions and asking. It's like, oh yeah, we're facing we got a really good defensive matchup, really looking forward to getting off the line quick and got to get off those get off those jams, and we really think that the middle of the field is going to be wide open for us. But it changes from that to now being on the opposite side of the one asking questions, and you're asking questions in ways to prepare yourself for what you'll see in the game on that upcoming Sunday, Monday, or Thursday, or if you're playing in Australia like the Niners and Rams are, Wednesday night, or whatever day that is. Regardless, the way in which you attack the weekend, the NFL weekend, changes entirely. And it's extremely impressive to make the switch. Because, again, I've said on here before, talking with Johnny, about athletes who have switched over to the broadcasting role. And how it's really not one of those things where, you're there and then you're automatically going to be great behind the booth. Even a guy like Tom Brady, who's the greatest quarterback of all time, the greatest NFL player of all time, obviously, with those seven championships. When he went into the broadcast booth, there was nerves, expectedly so, which is funny because, obviously the nerves were not visible on the field as a quarterback when he was winning those Super Bowls. But the nerves, that's number one. Number two, you were not exactly dumbing down the game, but you're simplifying it. And you're simplifying it way, 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 way more than any conversation that he had with Coach Bill Belichick or his offensive coordinator, because they had a revolving door. Anybody, even his backup quarterback, whether it was, Hoyer or Garoppolo. The way in which he talked about the game with those guys changes entirely versus the way that he has to present this to the viewer, which is, again, not easy. And we saw his first year was a little bit of a struggle. There was a lot of guys that didn't appreciate exactly the way in which he was commentating. They thought that it was a downgrade from what Greg Olsen had provided a year or two ago. Then he got better. He simplified the game more. He helped identify what was on the field and simplified it majorly for the viewer. And now he was calling a Super Bowl, and it was night and day. So again, even the most NFL veterans, the most productive NFL veterans, it is a little bit of a struggle. There's a little bit of a transition period that goes on before you can immediately jump in the broadcast booth. Now, what does that mean for guys that are going through this camp? And that the NFL is hosting and looking to begin a career in broadcasting, again, starting from square one. What that means is, again, becoming a new student of a game that you've been a part of for your entire known life. Okay, that's number one. Number two is learning how to storytell. Storytelling is a major, major part of broadcasting. It's, in my opinion, it's the biggest part. It's because every game there is a storyline behind. Whether it's, we hear so many times of, Reese Davis before College Game Day, before a big rivalry game, throw the records out. But what does that mean to throw the records out? Because as a player, it's like, okay, we're a handful of weeks in the season. Okay, we're sitting at 3-2. We win 4-2. Looks good. We look like we're going to be a contender going into the middle of the season. 3-3 though, playoff doubts get high, and obviously there's a lot of season left regardless. But that's the main storyline that you're really focusing on. But what does it mean to throw the records out? What does it mean? What does it mean to say, no, this is brand new. Rivalries change big time. The entire storyline of even just interdivisional or interconference rivalries or whatever it may be, injuries, everything else. Now from a player and a position's perspective, changed entirely because now you're looking at the whole game, and that entire game becomes a story. The entire season becomes a story. Everybody talks about what's the story of the season, and that changes on a weekly basis, really, up until even like the playoffs. So learning not only what that story is or what it could be, but taking that, telling it, is a whole different art than any route any receiver can put together, any spiral a quarterback can put on a ball, any clamps a DB can put on a receiver. It is an art. And after that, it's again, the simplification. It is taking something and watering it down ever so slightly. Obviously, we saw like a guy like Tony Romo who was very sophisticated with it, but it made sense to the viewer week in and week out, which was huge. And viewers and audiences loved it. It's taking that and translating it to a way that is digestible for the viewer, which is huge. So those three things, that's what these guys are learning. That's what, again, 70% of athletes that you see in the broadcast booth in the NFL, that's what they've gone through. And that's the process. It's a day and night thing. And even for the play-by-play guys that may not have touched the field since high school, or even not as much, everything is learned. Learn how to tell the stories, learn the art form, and things will go well. That's how we end up with the greats that we have from the field and in the booth. I'm Gabe Loper from SportsCaster.com.
Our thanks to Wayne State University's Gabe Loper. When we come back, have you ever wondered how much a green jacket might sell for? Now, Rory McIlroy's might fetch a larger price tag than Horton Smith, who won it back in 1934, but a recent auction for his 43 long sold for nearly $700,000. We'll have more on that coming up. You're listening to Open Mic on WJR.